Good morning. So this short clip will be about the do's and don'ts of how to set up your hedgehog cage. There's not a lot of information out on it. This is my first hedgehog, and I've asked a lot of people for advice, and some things I've been told and some things I've learned the hard way. We spent way too much time making this cage. I was told by the breeder that I got this hedgehog from that it really isn't worth the time and the effort to build a cage from scratch. I didn't listen, and I went ahead and did it anyway. I actually would not recommend it, but since I have this here, I will use it as a kind of a prime example of some things you can do right, some things you can do wrong when creating a cage for a hedgehog, as they are kind of some strange animals. So I won't go into details here about the certain way I made this. Unless you're interested, contact me through a comment or a message and let me know you'd like to know the details of some of this, and I will go through it then at that point. But either way, right here today we're going to focus on this little critter inside. So inside here you see Murph, my little fellow. Number one thing that I wouldn't recommend is making a cage out of wood, which is exactly what I did back before I knew what it was like to have a hedgehog. If you don't already know, hedgehogs poop everywhere. They are very messy critters. So wood is difficult to clean and probably not the most sanitary thing. As you can see, I painted the walls here with some sealant material to help with that a little bit in the cleaning. Also, my grandma and I, since she's a wonderful sewer, made these little pads. We took felt, fleece, and inside is like a bed, what do you call it, like a mattress pad, leftover mattress pad we cut up and put in there and tacked it in there so that you could just throw this in the washer after a few days of being soiled. Highly recommended because it keeps in warmth, which is really important for hedgehogs, which I will explain in another video that I will make about keeping your hedgehog warm, which is incredibly important, and what happens if you don't. Plus, yeah, this is comfortable for him, and if he starts to climb around on things, if he falls down, this will help him not hurt himself. And speaking of hurting himself, the number one suggestion I got, which I did not follow, was to never make ramps. Because these little guys climb on everything, but they don't climb down off of anything. They just fall. I've learned that the hard way too. That can cause injuries such as concussions. It can even make them go blind if they hit their head hard enough. So if you really love your critter, don't do what I did. The way I made it okay, however, is I did not make it very tall. If you can see here, this opening itself isn't very tall. If he does crawl up this ramp, which he may or may not do here during this video, if he does fall off it, which I'm sure he will, choose to suicide bomb off this once in a while, he won't fall far, and when he does, he hits a very padded floor. So this makes it okay, but I wouldn't recommend doing it again. It took a lot of extra effort to make this safe. So second floors, for example, not the most highly recommended unless they're short enough that they can crawl up on them themselves. The next biggest key to your cage is the constant battle between ventilation and keeping in heat. So the apartment I live in is freezing. It has terrible insulation. So for this cage, of course, I have the screen in the front for proper ventilation, but on the sides, it's just solid wood. Because when I want to put my heat lamp in here, which again, I will cover in my next video about keeping your hedgehog warm, different ways to do that, I want the hot air to stay in there, but I don't want it to get stuffy and be poor air quality for the little critter either. So yes, I have done this with screen doors and solid 3 walls in the back. The second important thing to note on hedgehog cages is the size, of course. I've been told to have no cage smaller than 2 foot by 2 foot. For these critters, some get quite large, some don't get quite as large. You never know really when you get them as babies what they're going to be like. They're very active at night, contrary to what it looks like during the day, and they need a lot of room to run around. This isn't quite as big as I'd like it to be. Again, wasn't very prepared when I made this, but I am going to aid this here in the next few days with a wheel, and that helps a lot with these type situations. I'm going to put it right over there, and that's going to be a whole separate video because unlike the cage, I'm actually going to do that right. I have a pretty good idea of how to make that solid, safe, and very quiet, which again, if you check out my channel, you can see that video next, and I'll let you know how that goes. So I added the second level to make it a little larger when I bought this old cupboard at a garage sale. What I did here was I put this rubber mat material on the floor to keep the wood from soaking up any of the feces or the urine or any of those dirty things. This is the entrance up from the ramp. I put the little bars on the sides to keep him from just dive bombing down in there. You can't see it very well, but there is actually plexiglass right here that keeps him from jumping off the edge, as he will do, I'm sure. Leave it to hedgehogs. Another thing to be aware of when making your own cage, if you do go that route or looking for one pre-made, is watch out for sharp edges. As you can see here, I made this out of chicken wire type material, but the edges are quite sharp. So what I did was I took electric tape and wrapped it around the edge to dull the points. I have seen some pretty horrendous stories of hedgehogs that have kind of gouged their eyes out on certain things. Like I said, when it comes down to it, if you're wondering if your hedgehog will hurt itself on something, it probably will. Always take the safe route with these guys. So referring back to the ground covering once again, like as I mentioned before, I choose to use these pads partially for ease of cleaning for myself, partially for comfort of sleeping and warmth and safety from falling off things, but also I originally used the wood shavings for Murph when he was a baby, and I found that it made him very itchy, which is not a big deal. I'm sure he would have got used to that over time, but the biggest issue was when I would pick him up and interact with him, the wood shavings would be stuck in his quills and they'd go all over, and that was just kind of a pain for me. So it's just a personal preference. There's no real right or wrong way to do it as long as they're not allergic to the material you put in there. For me personally, I am a huge believer in wheels. Believe me, it's on the making, it's coming in this cage next. I just don't think that you could make a cage big enough to emulate what they have in the wild, but the wheel allows them to get the exercise they need, and even the laziest of hedgehogs use them. I never would have thought mine would use it, but in the other cage he's in right now, he uses it all night long. It's incredible. So again, keep those things in mind. A little bit of trial and error. Hopefully this video gives you a little bit of insight so you don't have to make the same mistakes I made while making this cage. I'm spending months and months making it. And let me know if you have any questions, or feel free to comment below with experiences you've had. And that's kind of a lowdown on Little Murph's cage. Good luck with your little critter.